Hi, I'm Rian, a Cyanotype artist, and let's do some experiments.
I'm doing a paper comparison on all of the papers I've hoarded over like the last year. It kind of started when I started using Timu and had this crazy thought that um, they have amazing papers for, ink drawings and paintings and things, and for some reason I thought that would apply to a Cyanotype, and so I just started buying random um, papers they were offering me cheap um, on Timu. I mean, I've learnt now that like Baohong and those are actually really good brands, and yeah, so I've got a few of those. I've got some random cartridge papers because when I learned Cyanotype from the photography tech dem in uni, he said to use cartridge paper, don't bother using watercolor paper. And then when I discovered watercolor paper, was like, well, that was a lie. And so yeah, so I'm going to just test all of the random papers I've got, and then kind of give you a price comparison on them all and how well they stood my tests, which aren't very rigorous tests. Basically, I just wanted to um, use the same negative and process for 8 minutes each one, which is kind of my standard, or used to be my standard. I'll waffle on about that in a minute. Um, and yeah, and then see how that goes and scan them, and then run them through a little bleach bath. When I bleach for toning, I don't like to completely bleach to yellow because I don't like the sort of, it's just a really, I find I get a really pale outcome that I don't really like. I mean, it's all, everyone does what they like, don't they? And I just don't like that. So I just like to bleach a little bit, so I still keep some like darker tones in there anyway. So I'm not going to do a full bleach. I'm just going to bleach how I like it, and then I'm going to tone in matcha green tea, which is also my favorite toning um, ingredient. I don't know. My toner is that's my favorite toner is matcha green tea. And then we'll see how the papers fared, whether they stood all of the washing, how well the prints turned out. I'll stop saying in a minute. So yeah, so I'm not going to keep going over all of the papers because I think that'll just drive everyone mad. So the video is just a bit of a sped up sort of me processing some of the papers. Yeah. I also bought some platinum rag, some Hanamule platinum rag, which I've wanted to try for ages, and then they had it reduced by like a third, nearly a third, in the most recent Amazon Prime Day. So yeah, so I'm just going to show you washing some of the papers, and then to be honest, a lot of the footage I had was just too dark, so I had to scrap that. But I'll show you the outcome afterwards. So this is one of my favourites, this Rowney watercolour texture pad. And I've used this since pretty much I started really seriously making Cyanotypes, and I think it holds up a lot of water. Really good for like tricolours or bleaching and toning. Yeah, I really like this one. So it had a really good outcome. And there's the image. The next one is one of the first Baohong papers that I got. It's little, and so I don't think I really realised when I was buying them at the time how little they were. They are nice to just print little pictures, but I quite like printing bigger Cyanotypes. So when you buy bigger versions of these papers, they're a lot more expensive. I really liked this though. The sky turned out really lovely. This is another Timu buy. Yeah, another little paper. And I think when I was just going through Timu, I was like, oh, I just buy these little papers just to try them. But I do wish I had probably invested in the bigger sheets because they did turn out quite lovely. And so this one also has like a really nice little like colour into the sky, and the dog looks really good, so I'm really happy with that one apart from the size. So another little Baohong one. And yeah, I think they are quite good little books just to make little pictures and stuff. But yeah, they all, I mean, waterpaper, I mean, generally holds up really well to water. Sky looks really nice in this one. And then this one, I did get this one also from Temu, and it's the same brand as the paintbrushes I like to use. And I think this one actually turned to be one of my favourites. It picked up a lot of the sky, which a lot of the prints didn't, to be honest. And so that's quite nice. And I think it's not quite an A4. Yeah, this is one of the cartridge papers. And as you'll see, like the two cartridge papers I used were 150 and 130 GSM. And it was just too thin. And so for like one print, I think it turned out okay, but for any more, you'll see anyway as we go through. I probably wouldn't recommend using these pads of cartridge paper. The print turned out quite nice though. So this is a bit of a wild card one to use. It was just a generic inkjet photo paper that I buy in quite big packs to just print photos and stuff for uni and stuff on them. And I knew this wasn't going to work, but when I've used this before, the print has come out so clear, and I never really understand how I can get that to transfer. So the first image there was the 8-minute exposure. The second image was a 12-minute exposure, and this one is a 20-minute. So if you are going to use photo paper, you need to expose for like a third to twice what you normally would, I think. Yeah, this is like an even thinner cartridge paper. I was so worried I was going to just rip this, especially doing it one-handed and holding my phone to film at the same time. Yeah. My GoPro had died at this point. But the print turns out lovely. They're really delicate papers. I don't know why it makes a difference with the contact printing, but the delicate papers make a huge difference. This is the first Baohong pad I bought. I'd say it was a bit bigger than A4. It's like a 11 by 11 or 10 by 10 inch pad. And I thought that was quite interesting getting a square pad, but in reality, I'm only going to do like oblong prints, so yeah. Oh well. I've missed which this one was. This is the platinum. I think this is the platinum rag. You can see we're losing light here. Yeah, I was really shocked with the platinum rag. I think I'll talk a bit more about it later. It's got a really lovely texture. I'm not sure whether it really is the best for Cyanotype. I know it's made for platinum printing. This is one of my favourites. If you've ever seen it, the watercolour artboard by Rowney. And because it's artboard, it doesn't shrink with the water, which is really great if you're going to do tricolour or duotone prints. Yeah, and then the Langton is another one of my favourites. I think it's quite a fine watercolour, which is quite unusual. But not watercolour, watercolour? It is watercolour paper. I'm losing my mind. So another picture of my dog, if you were fed up with my dog by now, in autumn. And then I mention this paper all the time, the Strathmore Bristol paper. I love because it's probably the smoothest paper that can do a lot of washing. It's a really hardy paper. This paper is also a bit bigger than A4 size, so as you can see I've got the border, so when you're doing an A4 print, the A4 print fits within this paper size, and so if you're clipping it into a frame or whatever, it doesn't really matter that you've got those clip marks in the outside. Yeah, So lovely. Less sky you can see there than when it was washing, but anyway. So these are all the papers. The photo paper, this is the image that was just the 8-minute exposure. Like I said, if you really want to use this paper, because it does give a lot of detail, then certainly, add a third, double the time, experiment, see which works best. I think for this, probably a 12 or 13 minute exposure was best. So I've had a problem with my chemistry. I've always used those 2 bottles of Jacquard that you just fill with water and shake them up and like leave them overnight, and then they're good to go. And so you just like, you've got the liquid chemistry there, and you just mix them together when you need them. And I'm on my 3rd set of the big bottles. They're not the big, I don't know if it's the biggest bottles. The bigger bottles, you get those little tiny ones, and then you get bigger ones. So the bigger ones that are about £15 on Amazon for a set. Like the last couple, I've had mold growing in my part B. And I know that can be an issue with part B with Cyanotype. And so after it happened to me the first time, where I was just using tap water and wasn't really caring, the second time when I got a new set, I bought bottles of distilled water. And so I used a fresh bottle of distilled water that hadn't been opened before and used that. And then I'd also put some, peroxide. Somebody said I'll put a dash of peroxide in and that'll stop the mold from growing. But after a few weeks, it was fine. And after a few weeks, the mold has started growing, and it's growing worse. They're really big chunks that have suddenly started coming out of it. So I have bought some new Cyanotype chemistry from a photography supply company in London, and so I'm going to try that, I think, this week. And I'll do a comparison. I think that'll be quite an easy comparison to do, to see whether mixing my chemistry straight away from the dry granulated chemicals will work a bit better than the Jacquard kind of easy method. So going to try that. The reason as well that I think it's not quite great, or because I put the peroxide in, I'm not sure, is the last couple of weeks as well, my prints seem to be coming out what I think looks overexposed. And I can't seem to get it to not look like that. And when I say that, I mean it looks a bit dark, a bit blown out. It doesn't quite have the detail I'm used to my prints having, regardless of the paper. It's not quite what I'm used to, and so I think it's just my chemistry has just gone a bit stale. So I have been using it up, experimenting with Cyanotype on glass, and that's not worked terribly well. But at least I am using it up. But so even if these prints are 8 minutes, that's my usual time from like for Strathmore and for the De La Rowney watercolour papers. And if you were doing these prints properly, I would say do a step exposure to find your perfect time for each one of these papers, but that kind of wasn't the point of doing this right now. Maybe I should, no, that would take so long. I don't have time to do that. So anyway, having them a bit overexposed also works out quite well for me when I come to do the little bit of bleaching, because you can use bleach. If you do overexpose a Cyanotype image, you can use a bit of bleach, just soda crystals. Excuse me. You can use a bit of bleach to just do a really quick little bath with the image, and it kind of like peels off layers of the print. I think I'm talking nonsense, but that's just how it feels to me. It kind of peels off layers of the print and brings out some of the finer detail. So you've got to be really careful if you just want to use the bleach for that, because I find you've got to catch the print just before it's ready. If you do it just before, if you do it just as it's like you're watching it bleach and like, oh, that's perfect, you pull it out and start washing it, you can't really wash the bleach off quick enough, and it kind of keeps processing and will keep going a bit, it'll fade and fade and fade. So you want to kind of practice doing that and catch it just before it's right, and then quickly wash it and wash it really well. And some of these, I don't know if it was the paper that just wasn't very good for bleaching. But anyway, that'll be the next video. You can see me do some chaotic bleaching and toning. The toning is less chaotic. The bleaching was quite chaotic. I just done it on a whim. And the kitchen was a mess. And I wasn't really paying as much attention as I should have done. So yeah. I'm going to leave it there. I'll see you next time.